passe super, l'artiste, super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to another Uninformed Handball Hour. We are in December and that means the start of the international tournaments, beginning with the World Championship for Women and then the Men's EHF Euro. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Women's Handball World Championship today, also a little bit about the Champions League, but we have a big discussion coming up later on, which I'll let Alex introduce in. But first, introducing the boys, Alex Kulesh.
Hey, Chris.
Brian Campion.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Alex.
So, should we start with the most recent thing that we actually saw each other in, or at least two of us saw each other, me and Brian briefly, in Aalborg last week, because we were on site for what I thought was one of the most exciting games of the season so far.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Really, really great atmosphere and just an absolute classic game, you could almost call it. And the first time a Danish side has actually beaten Kiel, if I'm correct, which was a pretty impressive feat in its own right. You seem to be having so much fun, Chris, that you lost your voice commentating.
Yeah, last couple of minutes were a bit dodgy. So that was the atmosphere's fault, you know. Yeah. That was my own fault for having the atmosphere up so high, and then like forcing my voice to follow that all the way. And then after about 58 minutes, it caught me out. So it went really low then, and that managed to cover most of it. But it's a sign of a good game, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, you did just have your 12th birthday, Chris, so your voice just broke at the end.
Precisely. But yeah, great victory for Aalborg over Kiel in a game which, also speaking to Danish journalists and people in Aalborg before, they weren't that hyped about. I mean, the occasion was really big, but they were missing quite a few players, like in particular their centre block, Rene Antonsen and Jesper Nielsen, also Aaron Palmerson out. So a lot of people were saying like, yeah, we'll see how long we can hold on to them and then maybe rotate the bench. We'll focus on the league game against Gyeonggi on the weekend. But I only thought about the Montpellier game earlier in the season where they had a similar situation and then smashed Kiel. So I felt they had a chance.
I do feel a bit sorry for Philip Yehe on the sideline, because I've never seen him in my life looked more agitated, and I feel like he seems to be wearing a lot of the stress in public. I think Sasha mentioned that also. He joked about that when he was on, and I think he's maybe feeling a bit of the pressure. I wouldn't say he's under pressure for his job now at the moment. I wouldn't go quite as far as Alex did in the past, but he's definitely seems to be frustrated with how they're playing on occasions. And yeah, when I was at the game, I always felt like, to a certain extent, that Aalborg, actually apart from early in the first half, that Aalborg they seemed to have a bit more petrol in the tank. Yeah, as you said, it was very surprising, I think probably to everybody, that even with the players they're missing, even though sometimes you look at them playing without Aaron Palmerson, and sometimes need to even play sometimes a bit better without him for some reason. Maybe he still needs to find his feet there in some regard. But because that was the same when I saw them playing against Szeged. When Aaron was off the court, sometimes you looked, this is the old Aalborg a little bit. When he comes on, sometimes it doesn't quite click as well as I thought it would. Yeah, even in the arena after the game, talking to some people, they were surprised by so many things, and you'd say to them as well, that's the first time a Danish team has ever beaten Kiel, and they're like, "Oh, is it?" And they weren't like, they were so unprepared themselves for the game, they weren't even realize the historical context of it. Great, another great match to add into the season of unexpected results, I think.
But I think it's a really good point about Palmerson, that he changes the way Aalborg play, and it was really, the Aalborg of last year that just clicked and they just worked. The team just knows exactly what each player on the court is going to do. And especially when Nikolai Leso is just bombing them, that they play pretty well. But he has his on and offs. I think the real benefit of Palmerson will come, let's say, in the later rounds, in the playoffs in the league or in the playoffs in the Champions League, where you can put him on and he'll be the difference maker. But I think Aalborg have to figure that out and potentially use him in the same form that Barcelona did. Because they did use him, even though he started most games, they used him as an impact. They had a game plan around him at specific points, which would just break other teams. Right now, I think Aalborg are trying to really integrate him fully, and that might not be the best way to go this season, especially when they look so good playing their own style. And they also, they really did a good job on the 7 against 6 at the end of the game. That clinched the game for him, even without any line players, bringing on Valdemar Hermansen.
He scored 2 goals, didn't he?
Yeah, scored 2 from 2.
Yeah, brilliant. Him and Benjamin Jakobsen, who is usually like the impact substitute. Like you have like one of those big forwards in rugby who comes in for the last 12 minutes to fill in as a prop. He kind of does that. He had a fantastic game as well. And yeah, I was just really impressed with how Aalborg managed to score the easy goals. Like it was that second wave counterattack goals, the goals immediately after conceding that just kind of like killed off a bit of momentum for Kiel every single time, because Kiel would go and score a goal with whatever effort they needed to, but then Aalborg would go and get one back almost immediately. They seem to have learned a big lesson from the first game, which I think is the big difference between the two teams on that occasion. They only played each other a week before, and Stefan Madsen definitely learned a few things from that game. And also, perhaps the worst set of goalkeeping performances I've seen at that level ever. I was so bad. I mean, I think both sets of teams were fewer than 20% saving percentage, which I don't think I've seen at that level before. Really not a good day for the goalkeepers, and particularly for Niklas Landin against the Danish team. He was 18%, Dario Quenstedt 10%, Mikael Lagerforge 15%, and Simon Gull with 15% as well.
Made it a fun game, but actually watching that game, I had to put on the dual screen on EHF TV to have the Kielce Barcelona game at the same time. So I was kind of switching in between the two depending on how the game was going. But I think really we can't go a podcast without mentioning just what a miraculous job, not a miraculous job, but what an impressive feat Kielce have achieved by beating Barcelona twice in a row. Away, that was an incredible performance where they actually controlled the game. They played at their fantastic speed. But again, in this home game, I think everyone expected Barcelona to come in and just show that they're still the big dogs. And that's what they did for about 45 minutes. And then completely fell apart. I don't know why this Kielce team is just something special right now.
Do you think this is just everyone's catching Barcelona now a bit at the right time? I mean, if you're ever going to beat Barcelona, would this early stage of the season not be the time to beat them when they have had a coach when they've been working with the same coach for about 12 years, and you now have a coach come in with a different way of doing things? And the players have said it themselves, we're going to need a lot of time to adjust to this. And even with that big, massive change, they're still really pushing teams, but then kind of things fall apart maybe the last 10 minutes for whatever reason. Do you think when they iron out these chinks that they will return to their old selves in a different way? Or am I not giving enough credit to Kielce?
I think you're actually overestimating Barcelona a little bit, because I don't think they've been as good this season, nowhere near as good. And I don't see a really clear route to how they get to the same level that they were before, because I mentioned that they're still missing a left back. Ali Zayn, Langaro are not Aaron Palmerson, and Gessan as well. They're just not firing right now. They're not contributing enough, and they were missing Sindrich, which I think could be the link to get them firing again. But I think this season, Barcelona have relied on Gonzalo Perez Vargas way too much. And I tweeted just before they lost the game.
Can we just address this this pair of tweets? Seeing as Brian and I were busy at the other game, only one of us could have tweeted this. And at 19:59, handball is a simple game. When Perez de Vargas makes saves, Barca win. 2015. Handball is simple. If it is minute 59 and you need a goal, give the ball to Alex Dushabayev.
I thought of a better Alex Dushabayev tweet that it should have been handball's a simple game. 14 men run around for 59 minutes and then Alex Dushabayev scores the winner. I think that would have been a better one. But basically, I've had this thought this season that Barcelona have been fully reliant on Gonzalo Perez de Vargas' performance, and he has been incredible. So I think, apart from maybe 3 or 4 games this season, he has made a kind of above 14 saves. He's been absolutely incredible, and Barcelona have won every one of those games when he's playing at that high level. The issue is when he doesn't play at a high level, that's when their losses have come. They're not dominating to an extent where they're not bailed out by the goalkeeper. And it seemed in this game, up to minute maybe 45, that De Vargas was making saves. He had 11 at the point that I tweeted, and Barcelona were in full control. But then he stopped making saves, and Barcelona fell apart, which means that there's something wrong with them. They're too reliant on a good performance from a goalkeeper to get wins right now. That wasn't the case. That was almost, let's say, a bonus at the end of a season, or it was a bonus in a game that would make the difference between a 12-goal win and a 3-goal win. But right now, they're fully reliant on him. And when he stops making saves, they just crumble a little bit. And at this stage, I wonder if it's becoming a mental thing where they're fired up by De Vargas' performance and they themselves play better. But when goals start coming in, they seem to fall apart a little bit. And that's what happened. Kielce just kept running, and broke through. And Alex Dushabayev was absolutely incredible, including that ridiculous move in the last minute where he had nowhere to go. He had players in front of him. He took a weird shot that always goes in at that moment. But there is a caveat that I think there was an offensive foul when that happened. But let's not ruin a good moment, a good story, and a good night for the Kielce fans.
For Barca, we also have to consider that there have been a lot of changes over the summer, and maybe it's not the worst thing for them to not be playing so amazing at the beginning of the season and running away with the group as they have in previous years, just to falter later on. But it definitely seems like a transition period for them. Just quickly looking at the other big stories of the group so far, and Montpellier, top of Group A on 13 points, which is really, for me, that is probably almost as big a surprise, if not even more of a surprise than Kielce at the moment. And even though it's a softer group overall, it seems very even Group A, and we have to give Montpellier a lot of credit, also considering how poorly they're doing in the French league.
I can't remember where we put them at the start of the season. Do you remember, Chris, when we ranked them? Did we put them mid of the group for a finish, I think?
Yeah, I think they were in the middle pack. It was like Szeged, Kiel, and maybe Aalborg in the top 3 there. Yeah,
it is kind of the group of surprises in a lot of ways, because we have the Montpellier top in the group is a big surprise to almost everybody. Some of Elverum's performances were huge, and then I think Brest's season so far has just been, I think nobody expected they would be that bad. And And then, of course, the biggest handball story of the whole year is also coming out of that group, that our good old friends Zagreb have won their first game in what was it, 750 years? So congratulations to Zagreb.
Watch out for Zagreb. You know, they're only 1 point away from Vardar for that 6th spot to qualify. I had them as my surprise. They're
Yeah, look, it's their last season in the Champions League, so they're going to be no, but like they're not going to be in it. They're not getting the automatic spot next season, so they're going to be really pushing for it this season. That's incredible, isn't it?
But I'm proud of what Zagreb have done, and they've reclaimed a bit of pride for Croatia.
They're no longer a disgrace of the Champions League.
That title goes to Meshkov Brest. Absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, I have a feeling. I mean, there's been some murmurings which are not worth mentioning at this point, but some really big things could come out of this whole Brest story this season. Can't say any more on that at the moment. We'll see as time goes on, and if Brest can salvage anything from it. Anything else in the Champions League?
Just to say, let's say that both groups are still open. It's looking really good. I think only Meshkov Brest are the team that may look like their season is over. Even Flensburg have climbed the table with their 7 players that they have available. It's pretty amazing. Anything can happen. I'm looking forward to the final rounds of these groups.
Very good. Now, before we go into our big discussion in the podcast, which I'm still not going to tell you about, Alex will shortly, we'll look ahead to the Women's World Championship, which starts this week in Spain, in this lovely sunny southeast of Spain, which I'm going to be in for the next couple of weeks, covering it with Streg Spiller. We'll talk a little bit more, I think, as the championship progresses, because, for me, I'm still not sure at what point this tournament really begins. It's 32 teams involved, something we saw in the Men's World Championship in January. But, it's hard to see whether the women's competitions are actually ready for it yet at this point. And interestingly enough, when the EHF were celebrating its 30-year anniversary there last week, there was some interviews with Michael Wiederer in which he made an interesting point where women's competitions seem to follow the men's 4 years later in Europe. So the big decisions like having the EHF Final Four, it was the men first and then the women's came 4 years later. And it's also the case with the expansion of the EHF Euro to 24 teams. It's happening for the women 4 years later. The IHF have rushed into it with the women's competition with 32 teams. And, when you look at teams like Iran, Uzbekistan, Congo, Paraguay, and Puerto Rico, given the fact that COVID is still a big thing, and also in some of these countries as well, there's just been a complete lack of pre-championship preparation for them, or even in some cases, proper qualification route. And I do worry that for maybe half or even more of the championship, we're just going to have a lot of whippings. And, it's hard to compare it exactly to the men because there were some cases with COVID that took some teams out. So you had like Cape Verde, for example, didn't get a chance to show themselves, but it meant that we had some really weak teams in the main round. And my fear here is that we may not get a proper game for most of the teams until the quarterfinals.
God, I'm really pumped for this now, Chris. Thanks very much. I'm really excited. You've really sold it. No,
I'm not saying it's going to be like that, but
yeah, I'm just saying I'm worried. No, it's definitely a good point. And when you do look at some of the teams there, when I was going through the groups, I was trying to pick out a group of death and the easiest group, and I was kind of looking at them. I was like, well, that's quite easy as well, and it was quite a hard task to pick out the group of death, which I narrowed down to Group A in the end. But yeah, not the easiest, because some of them are really like cakewalks.
I think Group A is probably That's a real group. That will be interesting.
Yeah,
But
big time.
looking at Group C, for example, where Norway are going to play Kazakhstan and Iran. Sorry, Norway and Romania with Kazakhstan and Iran in there. That's just going to be... And I actually, most of the groups end up being two good teams, two fairly poor teams. Like, Norway can just maybe play their full second team for the whole group and get away with it if they want to.
Also with no Christina Niagu in the Romanian team. She's taking a break. That's another thing as well. I mean, it could provide... the counter to this is that it's the first major championship after the Olympics, which often means that teams are rebuilding, and there could be a bit of randomness in that and could level the playing field a little bit, but not enough. And I mean, also when you look at the African teams, Angola, I think they won the final of the African Championship by 10 goals. So there's really a big disparity between them and the rest. And, you know, at the Euro in 2020, no matter what, like even though it was a fairly level playing field, the fact that only two teams qualified from the groups of four made it like there was real jeopardy at the beginning. That's not the case here for the most part, because three teams qualify for the main round. Group A, as you said, I think would be really interesting. It's France, Montenegro, Angola, and Slovenia. France, as Olympic champions, should be like clear favourites. Montenegro not looking so great at the moment. They were heavily beaten by Sweden a few days ago. Angola, particularly at the beginning of the championship, can match any European team. They kind of fade as the tournament goes on. And Slovenia, you're never too sure what you're going to get with them. They can beat the best team in the world one day, quite as easily lose to Angola on another day. So one of those teams will get knocked out, which will be a big story. But besides that, yeah, it's really hard to... I mean, the Group B is another one. Germany, Hungary, Czech Republic and Slovakia. But Slovakia, I think, are safely the weakest of those four teams.
And I think also just the main round format in this as well. It means that there's going to be quite a lot of weak teams that actually get through to the main round as well. So, you know, one of Tunisia and Congo will be in the main round. One of Puerto Rico or Uzbekistan will be in the main round. One of Kazakhstan or Iran will be in the main round, so that it kind of dilutes the main round as well with games that really don't matter. And I suppose if you're going to do a tournament like this, maybe just have a big knockout, full knockout format to run through it. But to get a team like, you know, Puerto Rico, let's say, having especially the lower teams who have to play extra, you know, who might have a limited squad and are playing extra games, it might just get worse and worse. We might have one or two good performances from these lower ranked nations at the start, but we know historically that lower ranked nations don't have the squad. They suffer from fatigue a lot more than the bigger squads, and it might become even worse and worse. And to have a main round game that finishes 60-15, you know, we're not, you know, we're not out of the realm of that, of possibilities. So yeah, it might be a bit too much.
Tell you what though, the President's Cup is going to be lit. It's going to be absolutely on fire this year. Imagine that. Four players turn up from Paraguay. That's all they've left after a bit of COVID versus 12 Congo players.
Okay, well, look, as long as we don't have any COVID problems like at the Men's World Championship, that I'll be happy enough with that. But I mean, looking at the main round as well, don't want to look too far ahead, but there is also like a golden opportunity for a team coming out of groups G and H to qualify for the quarterfinals, because you have Croatia, Japan, and Brazil, the likely teams to come out of Group G, and then Spain and Austria out of Group H.
Chris, Just
the group, there's a big chance here for one of those teams to make it through. We'll talk more about that next week.
I think we can gradually build ourselves into this tournament as it goes on. Focus on the nice storylines that I'm sure will come out of this tournament as well.
Yeah.
But where are you going to be, Chris? What's your travel plan?
Going to Loria. I think that's going to be the main part. We're going to be based in Valencia, which is kind of in the middle of a few of the venues, but Loria is going to be the focus at the beginning for the preliminary round, and then on to Granollers from the main round onwards.
Nice little winter break for you.
It's like 20 degrees at the moment.
Yeah.
Good.
Pick up a bit of Omnicron while you're there as well. for the year that's in it. What position would Omnicron play on the handball court? I think he'd be a line player, would he? Nothing stopping him. Like,
is there going to be fans at this tournament? It's all full.
Yeah, they're allowing up to 80% capacity.
Well, good luck with that. Getting 80% for a lot of these games.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, I'll hold my judgment on that. We'll see how much the Spanish public react to it. It's the first time they've had a major women's championship, so remains to be seen.
Right now, I think we should go into the big discussion. And that is anointing a World Player of the Year, because we've realized that the IHF Player of the Year is just never going to come out. And that is a terrible process anyway. So we've redefined the rules a little bit, and will now try to, between the three of us, present the 2021 Men's Handball Player of the Year, anointed by the Uninformed Handball Hour. So we're completely
We will
skipping.
do the women
Yeah.
in January.
The reason why we're skipping, and I'll go into details of why we're formatting like this, the women at this stage, is because of the World Championship that is taking place in December. But we are looking at the 2021 calendar year in this case. The last IHF World Player of the Year was anointed in 2019, and that was Nicholas Landin. And I think it was announced basically at the start of 2021. So we're not going to wait around for another 2 years.
July 2020.
July 2020. We're not going to wait around for another year for a Player of the Year to be announced, and we will break it down and see who was the best player in 2021. So included in this ranking, we have the Men's World Championship that took place in Egypt in January. Denmark came out winners there, beating Sweden in the final, and Spain got a bronze medal there. We also have the Olympics included, one of these years that's a little bit more special for handball. So the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which France surprisingly won, beating Denmark in the final, and again Spain got themselves their first ever handball Olympic medal and got a bronze. We're also including all of the club championships, which concluded before the summer. In the Champions League, it was Barcelona that reigned, beating Aalborg in the final, and PSG got the bronze medal. Of course, all the league championships, all of that's included in these metrics. And you're welcome to include performances from the first half of this year in your rankings. And the way we have approached it is each one of us has looked at the one major competition in the year 2021, with Chris looking at the World Championship and presenting his top three players, Brian sifting through the hours of footage of the Olympics to get his top three players there, and I've put together the best performances at club level, including Champions League and the leagues, presenting my top three performers there. looking at all that, we're going to compare, see what's most important, and try to pick the best player in this calendar year. Everyone know the rules? Everyone happy with the rules?
Ready.
So, Chris, you do seem ready. So, give me your pitch for 2021 Player of the Year based primarily on the World Championship.
Set the scene. It was a cold January for most of us, but in the Egyptian desert with no fans and despair as COVID tore through the championship early on, there was one true breakout star. A man who shot an incredible 83%. His name was Gauthier Mvumbi. I'm joking. But we just, if this year deserves a special recognition, or that goes to Gauthier Mvumbi. We can't forget his contribution to this handball year.
And he does have a clothing line out now. With the Shack of Handball, so make sure to check that out and get some Shack of Handball merch.
And just remember those stats, by the way, 83%, 20 goals out of 23 shots as I go through the actual players I've nominated here. All right, nomination number one, it's one of the obvious ones, and I have a feeling he might come up elsewhere, Matthias Gitzel, because it was his true breakout at this championship. He was in the All-Star team at right back. He offered Denmark something that they hadn't had in years, really. It was a proper right-back player who was also a brilliant playmaker in his own right. 39 goals at 80% and 27 assists on top of that. He was, when we look back at Denmark in January, we were all expecting Emil Jakobsen to be the breakout star for them out in the left wing. He had to wait a little while, but Matthias Gitzel just kept impressing us over and over again as the championship went on, and we thought, okay, he hasn't really been tested yet. Maybe it's just because he's playing against some of the softer teams, but no, he really delivered. It was a great championship for him and for Denmark, of course, who won gold. Francis Marzo is my second nomination. And I think that look on your face, Alex, is something of either surprise or approval. Maybe a bit of both, and I'll take that, and it's really hard to look past him there. 58 goals and 27 assists. He was a man who single-handedly dragged Qatar through that championship before they were knocked out by Sweden. Just a brilliant performance, and it left us all kind of sad that he was leaving European club handball afterwards, because clearly with performances like that at the World Championship, he had a couple more good years left in him, and I was just really happy that he got to showcase that for a Qatar team that kind of changed a lot of our thoughts about Qatar as a handball nation, in quotation marks, and a handball team. We kind of softened towards them, most of us. And then my third nomination was a tough choice between two Swedes, who we have to remember sensationally got to the final. It was between the playmaker Jim Gottfridsson and Hampus Vanna. And I think both of them could pop up elsewhere, but I'm going to go for Jim Gottfridsson on this occasion, because besides the final where he was shut down well and truly, he had an amazing tournament and had an amazing season, that 2020-21 season, but that World Championship was a real highlight for him, where at times he just looked completely unstoppable. 24 goals, 36 assists, which was the second highest at the championship. And so I'm going to give him the nod as my third nomination.
So you're omitting Mikkel Hansen from your nominations, even though it was really a double act between Hansen and Gitzel, right?
Yeah. That is correct.
But you don't.
There's only 3 spots
for his red card.
Yes, I agree. It is because of that red card and that fact that he almost single-handedly knocked Denmark out in the quarterfinal against Egypt. No, it's because I was only going to pick one from one country, or from each country, and Gitzel for me. had to be the man.
Okay. That wasn't part of the rules. Wasn't part. You're very welcome.
Oh no, my own personal rules.
But I think it's worth commending Hansen's performance there, and surprised to not see an Egyptian name in your nominations. There is Brian Campion's favorite breakout star that had a really good tournament.
The night is young.
So the list can be changed. Is that what you're saying?
No, the Olympics are yet to come.
Well,
no pressure, Brian.
The night is young isn't really the best introduction for me because we're moving next to the land of the rising sun. For an amazing tournament which I enjoyed so much, and I'd say I didn't miss a second of it. So, and I went back through all of the footage again, as Alex said, every single game in preparation for this list. And I narrowed it down to 4 players. And I want you guys, Chris and Alex, to pick my third spot because I couldn't decide between these two. No surprise, in its top 3, we have another Danish duo, which Alex touched on just a minute ago, which these two powered Denmark to the final in Japan. An easy one has to be, of course, Matthias Gitzel, who picked up MVP of the tournament. And as Chris said, in his breakout year, to pick up MVP of the Olympic Games in the same year, I think is pretty incredible on its own right. He scored 81% of his goals, 46 goals from 57 shots. And to his left on the court, we had the top scorer in Mikkel Hansen of the tournament, who would be in second position. His 4th goal of the game against Portugal made him all-time top scorer of the Olympic Games. So that was another milestone, another feather in his cap along the way. But I wouldn't put him in first position in my head because how many goals did he miss? He scored 61 of 100. So his actual shooting percentage in some games maybe wasn't the best. He actually had the second worst shooting percentage of the top 10 top scorers. Only my main man, Yahya Omar, outdid him with 38 goals from 63 shots, because it's just the pressure on Yahya's shoulders of being the breakout star 7 years in a row, I think maybe gets to him sometimes.
Yeah, I think definitely, I think Hansen had a better World Championship than Olympics. But you mentioned that shooting percentage. He also, takes a lot of penalties. So actually, from the field, he had a worse game. A lot of maybe poor games. He still dictates a lot of what Denmark do, but I think in this case, from my perspective, Gissel was the real gem for Denmark in that tournament.
The third position now is a tricky one because you look at Alexi Gomez's stats as well, 44 goals from 47 shots, which is bonkers for anybody. That's 94% shooting percentage. But then you also have Vincent Gerard, who is a man who just only decides to play handball once every 4 or 5 years. And this was one of those tournaments where he decided he was going to start playing some handball. He faced 236 shots, which is way more than anyone else on the top 10 goalkeepers list. So you look at that goalkeeper list, he's actually quite far down. He's in 6th position. But then you look at all the shots he faced. He faced 236. The next closest would have been Landin with 196. So he was really playing a lot of handball in Japan and came away with 31% on the as a saving percentage, but was key in them lifting the title. So my question to you guys is, do you go for Alexi Gomez or do you go for Vincent Gerard? What do you think?
Well, I think you have to have a French player in there. And Gerard, just that performance in the final was truly one of the best goalkeeping performances of all time, I think. And at the semi-final in there, he was a man possessed, and it was incredible to see. I would put him. I think Gomez is like a bit of a weird player in the sense that he scores a lot of goals, but it seems like that's all he does. And of course, that's the role of a winger, but there's something, yeah, I know it's difficult for a winger to be kind of a best player of a tournament, a best player in the year. And we're maybe seeing it with Dylan Nahi, how he kind of transcends the position a little bit. We've seen before with Abalo a little bit, but I don't think Alex Gomez is quite in that sphere.
Yeah, I'd agree. Vincent Gerard.
Good.
Any other French players? I think probably worth mentioning Remili in that conversation, because he took over that playmaker position for France, which we all thought was their weakest link and wouldn't work. But he had an incredible tournament. I think he dictated in his own way the great performance from France, and just a real surprise to the world that France won that championship.
Would he have? Would you swap him out with Mikkel Hansen?
I don't know. Like, looking, Hansen still scored 12 goals in the semi-final against Spain, and then was probably one of the only players that was playing well in the final with 9 goals. I'd keep Hansen in there, probably.
So then a fourth close place to finish for Remili, probably.
And it is worth mentioning as well, Matthias Gitzel was incredible in the tournament, the MVP of the tournament, but he got shut down in the final. When France put Karabatic on his side, and really, we were asking, what's Karabatic doing at this tournament, coming off an ACL? It's that. He's still able to put in a performance, and okay, Gitzel still scored six goals in that final, but it didn't have the same flow.
Yeah, that says a lot about France's impressive performance, I think, in that final. The fact that they were able to shut him down. Okay, shall we move on to the club handball now? And it's an all-encompassing one. Alex, what have you got for us?
When you look at the club handball season or the year within 2021, there was quite a lot that, we had an incredible Champions League campaign. We're excluding, in this case, the delayed Champions League Final Four that happened in December. So since we're not anointing a 2020 Player of the Year, that falls into the abyss. So we exclude that. But we had an incredible Bundesliga season. I just looked back at it, and it came down to a last-second equaliser from Miha Zarabets to clinch Kiel the title against Flensburg, a crocked Flensburg team. In France, we had PSG win as always, but Montpellier pushed them a little bit. It was a close one. In Denmark, Aalborg were really pushed by Matthias Gitzel's GOG right until... but they did squeeze out a win in the final that got them that Champions League spot. But there's really one team to talk about when we're talking about 2021, and that is Barcelona. They won every single game. No, actually, when we're talking about the calendar year, they have lost a couple now. But at the end of that 2020-21 season, they may have been the best team of all time. They dominated everywhere. They of course, they won all of their domestic cups and leagues. That's not a big boost for them in this, but the way that they dispatched the Champions League in 2021 was incredible. So it's hard to look past the best players on that team. And for me, I have chosen 2 players as my nominations. I will also have an honourable mention for Jim Gottfriedson, who did drag a Flensburg team through the season with their 10 available players and almost clinched that Bundesliga title. But you have to look at the best team and you have to look at the best players on on that team. And for me, it came down to two players. The first was Dika Mem, who I think really had his breakout season to the superstar level. So, of course, we all know who Dika Mem is, but many of us, including me, doubted whether he had the full chops to be the man on a team, and he really showed that in the season. He was the fourth top scorer in the Champions League with 92 goals, but that's only 3 behind Valero Rivera in the first spot at 95. He was also, I think he got 31 assists in the Champions League. He was dominant, absolutely dominant, and a pleasure to watch. But the other player, I think, has potentially a better case, and that is Gonzalo Perez de Vargas. As I mentioned previously in this podcast, that when he's making saves, Barcelona win. And the reason why I'm putting him the best player in club handball, and maybe this is too narrow, but his performance in the Final Four, where he had 14 saves in the semi-final to get Barcelona past Nantes, and then 16 saves in the final, where Barcelona dominated against Aalborg. Really kind of brought it all together, and we saw him at the highest level there. And one stat is the one that kind of pushed me away from Dika Mem, and that was that Gonzalo Perez de Vargas scored more goals in the final than Dika Mem. So de Vargas had 3 goals from 3 shots, while Dika Mem only had 2 goals from 3 shots. So,
Oh, I love that.
for me, it comes down to the two of them, because I think Dika Mem's performance throughout the season is the reason why Barcelona won everything. He really was an unstoppable force within this unstoppable force that Barcelona were, but it was Perez de Vargas that made the big performances in the Champions League Final Four to give them the title at an easy saunter in the semi-final and the final. And of course, Perez de Vargas has also had the 3rd highest save percentage in the Champions League that year. Looking at kind of some other players, Mikkel Hansen has had the weirdest season, because he was 5th top scorer with 88 goals, but 51 of them coming from penalties. And if you remember last season, Mikkel Hansen didn't really play for PSG. It was Luke Stein's team who took over. So I can't really put a finger on any other player who impressed as much as Mem and de Vargas. Kiel got knocked out quite early, although they did win the Bundesliga. But those 2 men are my nominations.
Thinking about players that might have impressed to that level, I think if 2 games had gone differently for them, i.e. Champions League final and the World Championship final, players that we did talk about like being at a level where they were at one point or another the best in the world, Felix Klar and Lucas Sandell, really close to that. It feels almost too early to be including them in this kind of discussion, but really 2 players that could have broken into that, but were unfortunately on the losing end of big finals. Just one thing on Gonzalo Perez de Vargas, it's so funny that like at the end of last year, we kind of found it funny that Kevin Muller was the number 1 at Barca in his last season, and Perez de Vargas was kind of pushed down the pecking order a little bit, and we were like, oh, he's kind of the forgotten man. But turn of the year and into 2021, it really changed for him, and he had an amazing campaign, and now, as you were mentioning earlier, they rely on him so heavily. So an interesting shout there.
Yeah, and I think additionally that the start of this season, which still falls into the 2021 year, has seen Dika Mem continue to be a dominant force, which is great to see, and de Vargas just taking it to another level. But a good point on Felix Klar there is I think if you add everything up, he's he looks really good. But in the end, that there's a lot of finals losses to his name.
Yeah.
But you do have a free position. You only picked 2, so I mean, you could put it to him as third.
I did give Ian Goffreson my third spot for just dragging Flensburg through the season.
Okay. So at the end of it, we have 2 times Ian Gottfriedson and 2 times Matthias Gidsel, or Matthias Gizel. I have to soften those D's, I've been told. Gizel. Matthias Gizel. Then also Francis Marzo, Mikkel Hansen, Vincent Girard, Dika Mem, and Gonzalo Perez de Vargas. Now, how the hell do we decide a winner?
I think it's extremely difficult.
I think we need to get rid of. Okay, we need to just get rid of the weakest and work our way up. But Marzo, forget about him. Right, nice little comment, Chris. But he's not going to win world handball, unformed handball or player of the year bricks. He's not. So we can get rid of him straight away. Right, Cutthroat. Right, I'm going to go through this now.
All right, go on.
He's gone. Right, who else is in there? I think you can get rid of Jim Gottfriedson as well. I mean, he's very good, like top 3, but he's not going to be number 1, so we can already forget about him. Right?
Yeah, I think we take out any of the Swedish players because they all lost when it mattered most. Despite all having great seasons, they all lost at the key moment, so they can't be player of the year.
I think you can honestly probably take out Mikkel Hansen as well, because while he is top of the scoring charts, the scoring lists and stuff like that, and he did have a very good World Championship. It's a lot of penalties, as Alex said, and he's not the same Hansen as bygone years. While still very, very good, I just think, I don't know, I wouldn't put him down as player of the year in my head.
And you got to get rid of Dika Mem because he's not even Alex's first choice.
Exactly. So
we've
been serious progress there in 40 seconds.
I think Dika Mem has a bit of I'd like to keep him in, because while he didn't get nominated, but he did still win the Olympics and the Champions League and was probably the main player.
But that's because there was one man ahead of him in both the World Championship and the Olympics All-Star teams, and that was Matthias Gizel. So hilariously, we've come down to 2 right backs and 2 goalkeepers, which once again underlines the 2 most important positions in sport.
I think. Well. I think you can probably get rid of Vincent Girard as well, because while he did a very good Olympics, his club performances are all over the place for the year. So I think we can probably cross him off the list as well.
I'd agree with that.
So what we're saying is Gothia Mvumbi is still in the mix.
I'm just
He's
saying.
being consistent, at least. Consistent.
And he brought out that clothing line as well, so that's a win as well.
That's a big plus.
I just find it very difficult to give the Player of the Year award to Matthias Gizel for taking in his club handball, which is a large part of the year. So I think, we do have to, it depends on how you weight this, and usually these competitions are weighted heavily on the international competitions, but he was still very good in a Danish league. They really pushed Aalborg to the very end and didn't win anything in Denmark. Of course, it's a weaker team, and then also fairly mixed performance in the European League. So it is a large part of the season that they did just get knocked out by the narrowest of margins in the quarterfinals of the European League, though, to be fair. And now they're doing very well in the European League. And Gizel has...
And he seems to outperform us, though, when he plays more with world-class players as well. So we can't hamper him too much because he plays with a middle-of-the-road club.
Oh, yeah. So let's take this in. Already in the European League this season, Matthias Gizel has scored 50 goals.
Very good.
Alex's face, you can't see it. He's struggling.
I just find it hard to give it to him.
MVP of the Olympic Games and World Championship gold medalist. 80 and 81% scoring from the back court in both competitions. And dozens of assists. And it's his first major year.
Yeah, I think that aspect as well alone, that he was an unknown player in more or less in 2020.
Yeah.
That the breakout year, MVP of the Olympics, doing really well for his club. And what was it, how many goals was this year, Chris, again?
In the European League alone, Brian,
Yeah,
50.
50, my God.
That's wow, I'm surprised the two of us agree here.
Let's take everything in here. You know, Paris de Vargas, Champions League, won everything, won every game. Also, 2 bronze medals in the major championships. You know,
that's a disimprovement on 2020. If it was a 2020 and 2021 year, and making up for the IHF not awarding one 2020, I think I'd agree with you. However, the last winner was a goalkeeper, Nicolas Landin. However, there hasn't been a non-French or Danish winner since 2013. But that can't be held against Matthias Gidsel.
So we're picking Matthias Gidsel.
Alex, I think you have a little bit of a Danish bias here. You're just like, he probably just lives up the road. I'm not voting for him for that. I need something a bit more exotic than a GOG player.
Yeah, maybe for me, in this case, it probably makes sense with the 2 competitions that he was so phenomenal in. But usually I hate how much weight there is to the international competition, where kind of a full season and the majority of the games that a player plays is ignored.
We are talking about 2 major competitions, though, in 1 year.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue with Gissel's club performances, even though they are at a lower level. Although you'd say the Danish league is a higher level than the Spanish league. We're not getting into that. Yeah. That's Aaron Palmerson's words, not mine.
But Alex, he scored 50 goals this season so far. That's 10 more than 40. Think about that. And he throws the ball really hard. So I think we should just give it to him. He throws the ball really hard. So
Brian, what are you saying?
Matthias Gidsel, first place, best goalkeeper of the year, Paris de Vargas. Second place, Paris de Vargas.
All right, Matthias Gidsel.
Reluctantly. God, you have to really twist your arm there for that one.
With reluctance,
we can put a star beside it. Put asterisks beside it. Matthias Gidsel, Uniformed Handball Player of the Year, with reluctance.
And now we look forward to our 2-hour interview where Alex explains to Matthias Gidsel why he wasn't the best player of the year. Coming up during the European Championship next month.
He is an incredible player.
We should give it out to the public as well, to have them share their views, which we can talk about in the next podcast. So on Twitter and on Instagram, we'll put out some polls for you to share your favorite player of the year from 2021. But our unofficial World Handball Player of the Year goes to Matthias Gidsel. We'll leave it there. Thank you, Alex, for bending over eventually. That was difficult. Thanks for the support. We supported each other, Brian, saying as we both nominated him in our suggestions. And we'll be back with some World Championship chat very soon. Until then, goodbye.